They write about me like I'm not real. Crisis proof. Emotionless tactician. One of the most unflinching CEOs of his generation. They guess what my day looks like. Some are accurate. Most are romanticized. They focus on the private jet, the wristwatch, the 15-minute meetings, the sealed-off penthouse where I live, disconnected from the world. That part's true. I am disconnected, but not from news. Not my money. Not my calendar. From her. From what I used to be when she was near, before silence became a management strategy, before grief was the only thing I still owned that couldn't be stolen in headlines.
What makes you difficult?
That was the first thing Serena ever said to me. Not hello, not nice to meet you. What makes you difficult? 7 words. Flat tone. She hadn't been assigned to the meeting. She wasn't even supposed to be in that room. She was there to consult on a space redesign, some mid-rise renovation we were absorbing into our real estate portfolio. She sat opposite me in a forest green linen shirt, sleeves casually rolled, messy bun, zero makeup, no heels, just dusty work boots and a pencil behind her ear like an architect who hadn't realized she'd been dragged into a billion-dollar room. What makes you difficult? She repeated, tapping her notes. I stared. That's not how these meetings begin. I don't do these meetings. You don't speak to CEOs like that either. Only the ones pretending no one ever has. I tilted my head, intrigued. So, she sighed lightly, you stop breathing when someone disagrees with you. It's a control habit, visible in your micro-expressions. It strangles flow. And what would you suggest I do about it? Breathe sooner. I laughed before I could pretend not to. She wasn't impressed by the car I offered to send her. Said, quote, it's 2 subway stops. I'm not attending a royal engagement. She wasn't impressed by my name, or the usual game men like me play. Our flirtation started in shared silences, late-night blueprint revisions. Her, notes scrawled on the backs of coffee shop napkins. She'd mark building flaws with a red pen, and mine in blue. You look down when you're proud of your own idea, she told me. Once. You talk with your chin when you're nervous, she didn't. Soften around me for approval. She simply belonged. Like a language. I forgot I once spoke fluently, like comfort I hadn't earned. But craved anyway. It started simply, sharing tea between meetings, ordering dinner when we stayed late, arguing over floor plans, logic, creative tension. It only became something quiet and deep when I realized our last argument wasn't about timelines. It was about trust. You don't let people carry what matters to you, she said at 11:42 p.m. The last night we stayed that late in the office. I don't trust easily. Neither do I, but that's never stopped me from speaking for someone I believe in. She walked out that night with her canvas bag slung over one shoulder, half-drunk black coffee in the pocket, and I felt it. The guilt of letting someone else be brave, again, to the world. I was sharp, efficient, impenetrable. But I'd built an entire empire on emotional exile, because I thought love wouldn't survive scrutiny. Because I thought speaking her name would open a door I couldn't close, so I didn't defend her when they started whispering, didn't name her when I should have shouted, and I lost everything that ever made me more than a machine. Not outwardly, no one saw that loss, but I feel it every time I walk into a room and hear only my echo. Every time the press calls me ruthless, and they're right, they just don't understand what it cost me to become that way. I didn't notice her because she was beautiful, though she was. I noticed her because she was effective. In this world, beauty comes to the table wearing a different mask. It arrives expected, styled, memorized effectiveness. That walks in late with calluses and tells you your system is broken. Without blinking, she did all 3 before anyone remembered to get her a name badge. The meeting that morning was industrial, literally. We were absorbing a low-rise complex near the docks. On paper, it was scrap, an acquisition to avoid litigation damage to a partner firm. On my schedule, it was a 17-minute formality, with 3 team heads, a VP, and a junior consultant who would forward me the signed confirmations. She wasn't supposed to be in the room. She arrived mid-slide, final. Assignment renderings from our site advisory firm. One of the architects was saying. She folded her arms. Didn't know who she was. Not yet. Those figures are incorrect, she said. Everyone turned. Half of their metrics are pulled from survey data that's at least 6 years old. They also measured the setback lines against an obsolete code before 2021 amendments took effect. The room shuffled. A VP murmured something defensive. "Who is this?" I asked. She handed me a folder and didn't smile. "This will fall apart during phase review if no one corrects it. And when it does, the fine will be your name. Not theirs." She walked to the table, dropped the documentation, stepped back. Her boots were scuffed at the toe. She wore a graphite blazer with no jewelry, no lip gloss, no pretense. That was her currency. Competence wrapped in composure. A few weeks later, she was offered a short-term improvement contract. 3 months. 2 site advisories. No press, but I kept her. Longer. First, because I wanted to win. Then because I realized my chest physically unwound whenever. She said things plainly. I used to loop security. Footage of executive candidate interviews, not for surveillance, for posture, for patterns, how people sat, blinked, reacted. She once caught a glimpse of it on my screen. "Walking past, you record everyone?" "No, just the ones who say yes too quickly." She tilted her head. "You're obsessed with exposure." "I like confirmation." She raised a brow. "Of what? That you're the smartest one at the table?" I looked at her. She didn't flinch. That's how it started. Not attraction, recognition, of herself, of me, of silence. She didn't seem impressed by the numbers attached to my name. She never once told me she admired what I built. She only asked if I'd ever built anything that loved me. "Back, you mean legacy?" "I mean connection." I didn't answer. She nodded anyway. Didn't think so. One night, long after everyone left, she hovered by the schematic wall. Lights off, just the emergency glow strips and the hum of machines in standby mode. We weren't speaking, just clicking. She pointed to a structural flaw that had gone unnoticed for weeks. I watched her trace it. She said, "Your designer is too logical here. It's strong, not intuitive." "You think I pay for intuition?" "I think you paid for a name brand." I turned to face her, and for whatever reason, I said what I hadn't allowed myself to say in 13 years. "I don't trust many people." She looked at me, soft eyes soaking in whatever I was trying not to show. "I figured," she said, then walked out. No moral, no lesson, just truth left hanging in the room behind her. I didn't pursue her. There was nothing to pursue. I read her notes when she wasn't around. Reread her comments written in red, like she wanted to argue with me even while she wasn't present to win. I started to anticipate what she'd say during our site reviews. Imagined her rolling her eyes at my phrasing. I timed my coffee breaks with hers. Walked when I knew she walked. She was gravity without awareness, and I let myself be pulled. Silently. Systematically. Like it didn't count if I never said it out loud. That's the danger of falling for someone in the middle of a system designed to suppress intimacy. You don't notice you love them until it's been repackaged as logistics, until her notes disappear from your inbox without warning, until she stands one row behind you at a gala and feels like someone you used to know. She wasn't the most powerful person in the company, but she was the one who made the most powerful man in it feel. Understood in that you don't find twice. We never made rules, which made it harder when I eventually broke all the ones I never said out loud. She started staying later. At first, because of site reports, then render schedule delays, then nothing in particular at all. I noticed the rhythm before I noticed the intimacy, my screen off, her coffee hot, neither of us speaking, just tapping into a silence that didn't feel like tension. For once, just comfort we hadn't admitted out loud. There were days when the entire floor would empty out by 7, but she'd still be there, scanning blueprints quietly, ponytail half loosened, right shoe off, foot curled under her knee like we were working from a cafe instead of inside a multi-million-dollar operation. I knew I was in trouble when I started scheduling my own meetings around her breaks. If you'd like me to leave, just ask, she said once, catching me watching her more than my reports. I'm trying to decide if I'm learning something, I lied. She smirked. You never stop working, do you? I'm working right now. That's not a compliment, I didn't care. It was her voice. The way she could cut through performance like scissors to fabric. She didn't ask for access. She made presence feel settled, like she was supposed to be there. Every word she said felt like something I would have written if I still knew how to write like a human, instead of a headline. The first time I think we crossed a line was stupid innocent. I handed her a John Coltrane vinyl from my office shelf when I caught her, humming it under her breath. It's not decorative, I told her. You can actually borrow it. You have a record player? Somewhere, she took it with both hands. Held it like something fragile. It's rare, I warned. So is trust, she replied like it was nothing, and walked out. I replayed that sentence in my head for a week. There was a staircase between level 4 and the mezzanine no one used. Too narrow. Bad lighting. Hidden behind storage. Somehow, it became ours. She started sitting on the steps during long calls. Once I passed her heading up and instinctively said, "They're sending the wrong numbers to the press team again." She answered without lifting her eyes, because no one on that team actually reads your margin reports. And just like that, our conversations became more real in a stairwell than in every corner office I'd ever sat in. She preferred cracked walls. I think it made her feel less watched when she didn't have to be perfect. She made me feel that way, too. We never talked about anything personal. Not directly. She didn't know about the breakdown I had at 26, or the frozen inheritance battles, or why I sometimes wore the same suit for 3 days in a row. She never asked. But once, I told her that I hated dark mornings, and every time after that, she found a way to put light in the room. An extra lamp, a curtain pulled back, a playlist with too much piano, all of it subtle, but consistent. Women like her. They don't hang art on your walls. They quietly repaint the foundation and never take the credit, and I let her. One night, the elevator stalled between floors during a power glitch. We were the only two left in the building. She leaned back against the wall, calm while I ran diagnostics on my phone. "You don't like being still," she said. "I like forward movement. You equate forward with control. What do you equate it with?" "Escape." We stared at each other, same air, same tension, but no more metaphors between us. Stepped toward me before I could stop her, and I kissed her before she could change her mind. It wasn't wild, it wasn't reckless. It was two people kissing like they already knew it wouldn't be forever, but wanted to feel one moment of warmth in a building full of cold. When the elevator lights flicked back on, we were both standing apart again, silent. She didn't speak, just stepped out without looking back. And me? I stayed inside the lift long after the doors opened, because some people fill space so fully, the second they're gone, you forget how silence used to sound before they came. We never called it a relationship, not once. There were no labeled conversations, no promises, no rules. If you scanned my calendar, she was nowhere on it. If you followed my car at night, you wouldn't find her. She never posted, never bragged, never used my name, and somehow, that made her the closest thing to real I had. The world keeps a scorecard, but what we had didn't fit inside a box, so we kept it outside the room, and by the time I realized she was starting to wonder why, I'd already let too much stay unsaid. "Don't want to be at your events," Serena told me once, arms crossed, back leaned against my apartment windowsill. "I get it. Your world chews on people like me. I never asked you to show up. You didn't need to." I looked up from my glass. "So this is you asking to be public?" "This is me asking to stop feeling invisible." I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. She exhaled through her nose and looked away. "Forget it." But we both knew forgetting wasn't really the problem. I didn't forget anything. I just avoided everything. She started skipping our late nights, stopped, adding comments to final design scans, stuck to the professional. We still talked, still passed each other in hallway glances, still shared the occasional coffee at floor 16 when no one else was around. But the silence changed. It thickened. She once used quiet like punctuation. Now it sounded like withheld. Affection. I didn't know how far gone we were until the wrong person noticed us. It started with a look, a harmless 5-second delay when I paused to hold the door for her at a private board mixer. The PR officer who spotted it? Silent, but the handwritten note dropped in my inbox 3 days later wasn't. Optics matter. Boundaries matter more. Harmless. Sentence, vague, but it wasn't a warning. It was a mask for a threat. They always come that way in my world. Polite, clear, legally. Formatted guidance with just enough plausible deniability to protect the message from scrutiny. They're going to start asking about her. Marcus told me in the hallway the following week. She's irrelevant, I said too quickly. He raised a brow. To your strategy? He asked. To the board. But not to you. I didn't respond. Marcus leaned in. You're not in love with her, are you? I looked away. That was my answer. Serena felt it all shift. I know she did. You don't need headlines to see direction change. Sometimes people start believing you based on what you don't say, and I said less each day. The more she drifted, the more professional I became. I was trying to protect her. Truly. I thought isolation meant insulation. That if I just distanced things enough, if I stopped smiling too much, stopped moving too close, they'd never really associate us in a way that mattered. But that's the flaw in chess logic. You can't keep sacrificing your queen and still expect the board to respect you. Then came the article. Anonymous. Tip. Magazine with glossy pages, bold font headlines. Mystery architect behind closed designs, why Damian Reese keeps her name a secret. They didn't name her outright, didn't have to. The internet always finishes the blanks. Hours later, her face showed up in a comment thread. Not my team's profiles. Hers. Photos no one should have had. Clipped smiles. Partial glances. The cup she always carried. The bootlace she tied absent-mindedly when thinking. Being tied to me became a brand she didn't ask to wear, and I didn't defend her then, either. I told my team to pull the media flag, to let the cycle fade out, and it did. For the public, but inside our quiet corner, something broke I didn't know how to rebuild. She came to my office after hours. No assistant, no warning, no appointment, just the sound of heels I'd memorized in every hallway. She didn't sit, didn't take off her coat, just stood there watching me with eyes that weren't angry, just finished. I'm transferring. She said it like someone confirming the time, not breaking 2 years of shared silence. Transferring where? I asked, eyes not leaving her. To a non-profit development group. Her voice didn't waver. Smart urban housing. Low-income builds. I set the tablet on my lap aside, carefully. You didn't tell me you were applying? I didn't. I waited, but that was it. No explanation, no elaboration, just soft, uncompromising finality in her tone. Why now? I asked. She hesitated for half a breath, then said, because I'm tired of being erased in private and misunderstood in public. And that sentence, it landed. Quiet, heavy, final. I leaned forward. I never erased you. You never named me. That was never about you. It was always about me, Damian, she said, finally sitting across from me. That's the part you don't get. I was always about you, your shadows, your rhythms, your comfort. Everything about me had to exist where no one could see it. Not the media, not the board, not even your own team. I watched her hands. They were still, fingernails bare. Just like always. The calm was the part that hurt the most. Do you regret what we had? I asked. No, she said softly. But I regret how long it took me to accept it for what it was. Silence followed. Thick, but not hostile. You deserved better than backrooms and unspoken rules, I offered, voice low. She met my eyes with a calm that unnerved me. I didn't need better. I needed honesty, ownership, a name. I sat back. It's not that simple. It is, she cut in, still quiet. You knew what was being said about me. The stories, the assumptions, the looks. And all I asked once was for you to say it wasn't true. She stood up, slowly. But silence says everything. I stood with her. Do you still love me? That broke something. Her eyes flickered just slightly, but she nodded. That's not why I'm leaving. Then why? Her lips pressed tight for a second. Then she said it. Because if I stay, I am helping you build a world where I don't belong. And that, more than anything, tore through whatever protection I thought I had left. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded page. I was writing something for myself. I never finished it. Thought you should keep it anyway. She handed it to me, turned, walked out. She didn't look back, didn't wait for a response. The door didn't slam. It clicked. Softly. Final. No drama, no crash. Just the sound of someone reclaiming herself. The letter, I kept it folded for 6 days. When I opened it, only the first 5 lines were written. Loving him was like building a sculpture no one wanted displayed. Something you hide in a private room and admire alone. Until you realize you were never the art. You were the silence holding it together. That was all. Nothing more. No signature at the bottom, just absence, and that silence, that hurt louder than anything she ever might have screamed. It was raining. Of course it was. Every good exit happens underwater. She stood in the lobby holding a single umbrella and a small dark bag. She wasn't wearing one of her usual coats, all structure and elegance, but a worn green parka with frayed cuffs and a half-broken zipper. Her hair was pulled into a low, loose braid down her back. She looked nothing like someone who had shared half my nights, and everything like someone I couldn't reach anymore. Her name was already removed from the internal directory. IT cleared her credentials. Before I even approved it, I almost stopped. But I didn't. Because you don't fight. Protocol in a world you built around compliance. Watched her from the mezzanine landing, just far enough that she couldn't look up and catch me watching. She spoke briefly, with the front desk. Signed something, nodded silently at the security guard. McKinley, a man who'd called her the only decent energy this building's got. Then she turned to the glass, looked through 30. Stories of downward rain, almost like she was confirming. Something in her mind, like the world out there was rough. But at least honest. At least it wouldn't ask her to stay silent. She stepped through the revolving door, straight into the storm. Head up. Hood down, no collapsing, no breakdown, just movement. I placed a hand on the steel railing in front of me. Cold. Like her coffee cup when she used to forget it on my desk. The one that said, "Ask me again when I'm not tired." I wanted to run to the elevator. Catch her, say something. But instead I memorized her. Walk. The way she avoided the biggest puddles. Without thought, the bag hanging low on her shoulder. Too heavy for a woman who always packed light. I memorized her silhouette fading beneath city glow and rolling water. I told myself 1,000 things while she left. Now isn't the time. You're protecting her, remember? She'll call once it settles. She'll calm down. She'll return and I'll say it then. Never thought you were less. I should have told them you mattered. I'm sorry, but I didn't say it that night, or the night after, or the one after. That. They scheduled my interview the next afternoon. Global broadcast. Post-crisis narrative. New leadership tone. My stylist straightened the lapel of my new ash-black suit and said I looked impossible to touch. That was the goal. What no one saw. What no one ever would. Was that my skin still smelled like jasmine shampoo? Her brand. Subtle. Hidden in the collar of one of my coats she used to bundle into when the air conditioning in my office was too aggressive. It still lingered. The press called my performance flawless, stoic, ruthless, unshaken. They posted screenshots of me side by side with phrases like, "He never flinched." They admired me for what they thought was discipline. But the truth? They were praising the man who just let the only person who ever spoke to him like a human being walk into a storm without a word. It wasn't strength, it was fear, and when fear wins quietly, no one hears the failure except you. They put me on the cover of a magazine 1 month later, all black background, me in profile, jawline sharp, head turned with that perfect not-quite frown. The title screamed above my shoulder, Ice or Iron? What happens when you don't blink? The article praised everything, the way I handled the optics, the efficiency of my restructure, the lack of emotional interference. What sets Damian Reese apart, it read, is his ability to move on without ever looking back. They printed that like it was truth, like I didn't look back. Every single night, everyone wanted my secret, as if composure was something I could teach in a keynote. They didn't see how quiet dinners had become, how my building echoed sharper than before, how there were nights I woke up and instinctively scanned for her cup, the chipped one, with the handle worn down to a raw spot from where she gripped it between her thumb and forefinger. Wasn't there, it never would be again. It wasn't loss that ruined me. It was the stillness. Afterward, when nothing argued, back, the board gave me more, promoted me again, trusted me with the largest partnership our expansion division had ever signed off on, and I did everything right. Smiled on cue, agreed to the interviews, gave them quotes clean enough to frame, but inside, none of it touched me because she wasn't there to keep me human, not in text. Not in taglines. Not even in memory I could summon fully anymore. Just pieces, a sentence, a look, a tether that used to hold me from becoming exactly who they now celebrated. Marcus once asked me if I still thought about her. He said it like a dare, sitting across from me in our security-proofed conference room. She's okay, you know? Still working, if what I hear's right. Quiet work. Good work, I nodded. She always did better away from the noise. Did you ever tell her that? No, I didn't need to say it. She had known. That's what love looks like when it doesn't get diluted. Her kind didn't chase credit. She gave, without asking for a seat in the frame. Sometimes I hear people ask about me in casual fragments. He's unreadable. A risk machine. No distractions. If only they knew. All the distractions made me human. And she was the biggest one. She reminded me when I was cruel without realizing it. She was the pause between my sentences. I didn't know I needed. She didn't change my mind. She anchored it. And when she left, I didn't fall apart. I calcified. Turned into the silhouette everyone thought I already was. I never told anyone, not the committee, not the board, not even Marcus. One morning I emailed a foundation anonymously. It funds sustainable housing efforts in lower-income districts, the ones Serena used to mention offhand, while we walked through our $1,000 flooring prototypes. I didn't write her name in the subject line. Didn't explain where the money came from. Didn't tag it under Westcott Capital, just a wire transfer, labeled. For the structures no one applauds. They used it to complete a development in Jackson Heights, a roof Serena probably. Helped design while working weekends for people who could never afford. Meetings with me, I kept tabs, not for praise, to remind myself that impact doesn't need a headline. That sometimes, legacy is doing what you never had the courage to say out loud when someone was still listening. Over the next few months, I did it again. Quiet grants. Directed startup support. Seed rounds for programs without names, bold enough to make press no credit line, just silence. Silence in honor of what I buried under fear. The press started calling it the rebranding of Damian Reese, a softened man. Matured leader, a post-storm. Reformation, they still didn't understand. Wasn't healing, I wasn't reclaiming. Humanity, I wasn't trying to earn her back, I was relaying the message I should have spoken when her name was on people's lips for the wrong reasons. Now no one speaks her name, and that makes it mine to carry. I never painted it as noble. I told Marcus once, over drinks. He asked why I didn't feature what I was doing in my next investor roundup, tie it into our broader vision. Because it's not strategy, I said. It's not guilt, either. He watched me, but I didn't flinch. No, I finally said. It's memory. He sighed and tapped his glass against mine. To memory, then, there's a different kind of wealth, not the kind hanging in banks, but the kind that waits quietly in places no one else cares about. And I want to drown in that, because I've already soared inside platforms that look like praise. And none of them made me feel what her thank you did, the one she whispered after. Rendering that sketch the one I forgot to answer, so now I do it with actions, not for atonement, but because some kinds of love aren't about getting back. Some kinds of love just build in the dark and survive whether you're seen or not. They said she was teaching. I didn't believe it at first, not because she could teach Stoics how to feel, things with 5 syllables or less. I just couldn't imagine her staying still long enough to stand behind a podium. She used to say work, lived in motion, but I looked it up anyway. There. She was Serena Quinn. Guest. Faculty at a design institute 100 miles from the skyline. We once shared, scheduled to speak at a public forum on infrastructure and social equity. I bought a ticket under another name. No fanfare, no intention, no plan beyond seeing her in a space built by her own choosing. The hall sat about 300 people. I took a seat in the very back, 3rd row from the exit. Near the HVAC vent, didn't wear a suit, didn't bring security, didn't even bring my name. Then she walked out. No script in her hand, no projection behind her. Just a woman in a long dark gray coat with a tablet tucked under one arm, and her hair pulled back like it used to be when she needed to. Concentrate, she had presence and calm, and she didn't glance toward the back once, didn't see me, or maybe she did, and chose not to. She spoke like someone who had built her life on principles instead of plans. She never mentioned me, never alluded to our past. She stood on her own and referenced every blueprint by a case study she authored. No one asked if she'd ever been tied to a scandal. No one questioned whether her work was hers, and for the first time in almost a decade, I realized she'd done it. She'd outgrown the version of herself that waited for someone else to hand her the microphone. Now, she built the stage, wrote the format, taught the class, and I, finally, had the decency to just listen. When it ended, I stayed in my seat until the room was mostly empty. She stood near the stage, packing up quietly. A few students stopped for questions, autographs. She answered all of them with full presence, walked past the doorway when she was halfway through a conversation, paused. For a split second near the side curtain, our eyes met just once, not long enough for either of us to change anything, only long enough for her to nod. It wasn't a welcome, it wasn't an invitation, it was recognition. And honestly, that was more grace than I ever earned, so I left. No note, no approach, no interruption, because silence when chosen is not a punishment. It's a form of respect. This time, it was mine to give. She saw me before I had definitions, before the branding, before the bulletproof interviews, before I learned how to fake stillness on camera while shaking in private. She saw the version I refused to show anyone. Now, the man who didn't flinch because he hadn't yet learned what it meant to lose. When the world sees strength, it's usually looking at pain in a suit. I know that because they kept calling me Ruthless, cold strategist, silent shark, a masterclass in not backing down. They called me everything. But no one ever called me what I was before her human eye fought so hard to preserve an image she never cared for. And the irony is I lost what mattered by keeping what never loved me back. There's a letter on my desk, inside a plain envelope. No wax seal, no monogram, just her handwriting. I've had it for years. She gave it to me the day she left, or maybe the day before that. They blur now. I didn't open it right away, or that week, or the one after. I carried it like a shard, not because I wasn't ready, but because I knew. Once it opened, something else would close. I finally read it last winter. Snow outside. Silence in the apartment. Same glass walls. Just clearer now. Inside she wrote, "You were never unkind, just unfinished. I tried to love what I saw in you before the world taught you how to bury it. Maybe you'll dig it back out one day. Maybe someone else will hand you a shovel. But if I stay, I stopped being the woman who once told you that you were good, even when you didn't believe it. No anger. No shame. Just proof she understood more than I ever gave her the chance to. I don't chase speeches anymore. I don't sharpen quotes for headlines. I don't fight for rooms that don't require proof that I'm still worth listening to. Instead, I sit, I walk, I sponsor foundations quietly. I back her projects when I can, through third parties. Always anonymous. Once she sent a press release thanking mysterious funders who believe that innovation includes empathy. Knew that was meant for me, but I also knew not to reply, because this was never about earning her back. It was about honoring the walk, the one she made alone. The one I didn't follow her through, even though I should have. People still offer to ghostwrite my autobiography. They want chapter 1 to start with my supposed first big win, the day I closed a deal no one else could. I tell them that wasn't the beginning. The beginning was a hallway, a scuffed boot, a folded blueprint, and the woman who dared to ask what made me difficult. She's the prologue they don't know how to write, and the closure I never planned on needing. Sometimes, late at night, on the rare days I still forget what the voices online are, debating, I pour a single drink, look out at the skyline, and I whisper her name. Once, soft, like punctuation on a life, that kept counting things that didn't matter until it lost the one thing that did. The world sees me as ruthless. Let them post pictures of my buildings and call me immortal. Let them quote my silence and recite it like wisdom. Let them think I never bled. But she saw. Otherwise, she saw it before I did. She saw the crack in my spine I hadn't dared look at in the mirror. She saw the man I could have been if I'd spoken just one sentence at the right time. She's with me. And I don't care who doesn't like it. I never said it, because I was too afraid. And now that fear is all I have left of her. But in the quiet that follows these nights, I can still feel her echo, still hear her near the edge of sleep, still know, as sure as anything I've ever built. She saw me, and I ruined that.